So Bill Gates outed himself as a pretty giant prick this weekend. Listen to this from Mediaite. Speaking at a forum in New York with New York Times writer Andrew Ross Sorkin, Microsoft founder Bill Gates came off as far from enthusiastic about war in 2020. Speaking about the wealth tax, Gates said there's a limit to what he would be willing to pay. Quote, if I had to pay $20 billion, it's fine, Gates said. But when you say I should pay $100 billion, then I'm starting to do a little math about what I have left over. Sorkin asked Gates if he'd consider sitting down with the Massachusetts senator. Quote, I'm not sure how open-minded she is, or that she'd even be willing to sit down with somebody who has large amounts of money, Gates said. Then Sorkin posed a scenario which, for the moment, is a hypothetical, albeit one which appears to have more of a chance of happening by the day. The Times writer asked Gates who he would back in a general election, Warren or President Donald Trump. So he says the following, quote, I'm not going to make political declarations, but I do think no matter what policy somebody has in mind, whoever I decide will have the more professional approach in the current situation. Probably is the thing I will weigh the most, and I hope that the more professional candidate is an electable candidate. First of all, under this wealth tax that he's slamming, he says, oh, you want me to pay $20 billion? Fine. Should I pay $100 billion? Fine. No, I'm sorry. The $100 billion party goes, no, not that, but $20 billion maybe. He wouldn't pay anywhere near $100 billion under this proposal. He wouldn't even pay anywhere near $20 billion under this proposal. So for him to act like, oh my God, this is crazy, I think that if my math is correct, and I could be wrong because I suck at math, but he'd owe about $3 billion. Guys, he has $106 billion. For him to owe $3 billion, you do the math on that. So for him to bitch and whine and moan about this wealth tax, when the wealth tax is him paying less than even under his hypothetical scenario where he said he'd be cool with it, he says, oh, $20 billion, fine, I'd pay that. Well, this has you paying much less than $20 billion, so why are you acting like, no, I don't know, Warren versus Trump, that's a tough one. I'd go with whoever's more professional. By the way, I know the answer to that. Warren's more professional sounding, but he's not saying, yes, I'd vote for Warren. It's a dodge, man. This is his way of saying, I hope Amy Klobuchar or I hope Mayor Pete wins the primary. Oh, they're the ones who are more professional, so I hope whoever gets the nomination is a more professional candidate. Okay, so, but let me go a step further, man. So he wouldn't owe anywhere near what he says is not acceptable under this plan. So why aren't you saying it's okay? Maybe he's just a douche and he wants to keep all of his money. But also, even if he owed $100 billion, which he doesn't under anybody's plan, not even under Bernie's plan, which goes further than Warren, if he owed $100 billion, he'd still have over $6 billion left over. Over $6 billion. $6 billion. That's still more than any individual can spend in a lifetime. So you're going to sit there and you're going to act like, woe is me. Oh, wow, I might have to start doing the math to see how much more I have left over. Oh, would you look at that? It's $6 billion, so maybe you should go to www.shuddy.com. $6 billion and you're going to sit there and complain? Listen, man, I think there's a reasonable discussion to be had as to what's the line. Like, where's the line where the wealth becomes obscene? Where's the line where just the existence of that wealth within the hand of one person means that it destabilizes democracy by its very nature? Because when you're wealthy enough, when you're rich enough, that's power and control. And you could basically totally pervert and corrupt the political system to be biased in your favor and against the people. So where is that line is a reasonable conversation. But to act like you're some sort of victim when you have $6 billion left is beyond ridiculous. A system that allowed him to accumulate $106 billion in the first place, I don't know why it needs to be perceived as that $106 billion is his. Because your market value doesn't equal your human value. So when you say my market value is $106 billion, and so therefore that's the money that I deserve, that's the money I'm owed, no, that's just your market value. The fact that we allow it to get to the point where, you get all of your market value makes no sense, because under this system, we have millions and millions and millions of people whose market value doesn't even give them enough money to pay the light bill, to pay the water bill. We have tens of millions of working poor people in this country. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Half of workers in this country make $30,000 a year or less. So that imbalance in the system, yes, that's the market value of everybody in the system. But the market value is not equal to the human value, but to have the market value as the main thing that determines how much money you make and how much money you're worth and what you have in your bank account and what you have in assets and what you have in stocks, I think is ridiculous. I do. And that's the whole point of having a progressive tax system, is to try to ameliorate the deep ills that come about as a result of an unfettered free market capitalist system. And by the way, we don't even have an unfettered free market capitalist system. We have a corporatist system where it's socialism for the rich in many respects. They get the special tax breaks, they get the special subsidies, they get the bailouts when the shit hits the fan, and everybody else, it's rugged, individualistic, unfettered capitalism for you. You have to really compete if you're a small business owner, if you're a worker. But the elite, the rich, Wall Street, military-industrial complex, the captains of industry, they get the unfair advantages because they get the benefits of socialism when the government bails them out and helps them out, gives them tax credits and gives them subsidies, so on and so forth. So even the idea, even the framing of, oh, you're taking $100 billion of his money, I don't even think that's an accurate way of having the conversation. I don't think that framing makes sense because you didn't earn $106 billion. That's not a thing. Some of the hardest working people I've known in my entire life, were living at or below the poverty line. I know somebody who worked 3 jobs and he was living around the poverty line. One of the hardest working people I've ever known, and he was not well off at all financially. So maybe we don't have a meritocracy. Maybe it's not that the harder you work, the further you go. And we need to recognize that. And when you recognize that, you realize anybody having over $100 billion, that's beyond ridiculous. Bill Gates, you think we're supposed to sit back and watch that and go, oh, that's cool. Like, oh, that should all be his. What? There's no conceivable scenario in which any candidate, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, or anybody else, makes it so Bill Gates is not going to be okay financially. No matter what happens, he's always going to be okay financially, full stop. Even if we took $100 billion, he still has $6 billion left over. So the whole, he has this victim complex, this fear of being oppressed when he is the least oppressed person in the country. And that's what's insufferable about this. Is it's always the people that are the least oppressed that whine the loudest like they are oppressed. It says quite a bit that he couldn't just say, yes, of course I'd support Elizabeth Warren over Donald Trump, or God forbid you ask him about Bernie Sanders. It says so much that he just can't come out there and say, obviously I'd support them. I mean, this guy's a danger to the world. This guy's a thin-skinned lunatic. This guy is as corrupt as it gets. He can't say that. Why? Because Donald Trump is in favor of letting him keep untold more amounts of his money. Billions and billions and billions more. So that is, he's not betraying his class here. That's what it is. It really comes down to class politics. It comes down to elitism versus populism. When push comes to shove, as my friend Michael Brooks likes to say, capital breaks fascist. And that's what happened. Now, maybe there are some billionaires out there who actually would say, well, come on, who are we kidding? Of course I'd be for Warren or Bernie. But believe me, the number of them that would say that is incredibly low. And that's sad, because that's not a hard decision. Warren versus Trump is not a hard decision. Bernie versus Trump is not a hard decision. And the fact that the moneyed interests have to misconstrue the situation, act like the left is being more unreasonable than they are, act like even leaving him with $6 billion is unreasonable, is beyond ridiculous. She's not asking for anywhere near that much, and he's still uncomfortable with it. Says a lot, doesn't it?